don't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. Brock Purdy was 20 of 21. That's breaking Steve Young's completion percentage record, which is crazy. Only one incompletion. He snuck in a touchdown and threw a touchdown. Looked really, really good. And I'm here with Steph Sanchez, who was kind enough to join me. And I thought we would go over the game and some takeaways that I have. And we're going to start with that. We're going to start with Brock Purdy and grading Brock Purdy's performance and not just from the Cardinals game, but what you've seen of him this season. Has he surprised you this season coming off the offseason where he had an elbow surgery? How has he looked? Has he, in your opinion, has it improved as the season has gone on? I know it's just been a couple games from last year. What are your thoughts on Brock Purdy's breaking Steve Young's record performance?
Yeah, no, that was an incredible performance from Brock, and it came right after another incredible performance, right? Like if you saw what he did against the Giants, and he started slow that game, but as the game went on, he got more comfortable working against the blitz, and he ended up carving them up, right, for 310 yards. Now going into this week against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, their defense is probably not what it was last year, but under, Jonathan Gannon, new head coach, they're playing really hard. You can't deny that. And, they're giving teams some trouble, as we saw them against the Cowboys. And so I think the 49ers altogether as a whole did not take the Cardinals very lightly. And so I think Brock executing at the level that he did, he had just one incompletion. That was incredible. He didn't have an incompletion until the third quarter, right? So he was perfect all through the first half.
And that only came after, wasn't that his first almost getting sacked, right? Is when his first incompletion came?
Yes, he was almost sacked on that one. Yeah. So he kind of had to throw that one probably a little sooner than he would have liked.
Brent Williams was getting pushed back into him.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the NFL, right? I mean, sometimes those things happen, so you can't really fault Brock for that. Yeah. Credit to him for not taking the sack there, right? Yeah. And getting the ball out and, at least giving McCaffrey a chance to make that play. It fell incomplete. But, I mean, all in all, I think we got to give this performance A+ for, Brock Purdy. I mean, it was incredible what he was able to do. He was cooking. And I think also, I'm sure we'll talk about Ayuk as well, but the connection that I'm seeing him have with Brandon Ayuk, I think it's going to allow this offense to take yet another step in the right direction in becoming this juggernaut offense, right? I mean, we already saw what Christian McCaffrey was able to do. Now you add another guy in Ayuk who he can do those chunk plays. I was just looking at this because I was preparing for my show later. Yeah. Brandon Ayuk, his average depth of target was 21.3 yards. So that's good. The highest of his career. So that tells you right there, not only is Brock Purdy finding Ayuk, but he's finding them downfield, and that's
he's putting to bed those. He's putting to bed those detractors that maybe said that he wasn't interested in throwing down the field. And you're right, that did start last week against the Giants, starting off shaky. I was kind of like, okay, this is the most inaccurate we've seen him. He gets better as the game goes on. You can tell him and Kyle mid-game made adjustments. And you're right. They came into this Cardinals game. They were not sleepwalking in, being like, oh, same old Cardinals. And the Cardinals had a great game plan. I was incredibly impressed. I have been incredibly impressed with them all year. I was one of those suckers that saw some of those, Jonathan Gannon videos that weirded me out a little bit with his little noises and stuff, and saw them trading away.
He's a weird guy. He still is a weird guy.
And I saw them trading away players, and I was like, they're in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. But you're right. That team has been playing really hard. They showed, I was so impressed by how well they were able to stick with the Niners, considering how dominant the 49ers looked the entire game. It was kind of crazy that they kept it so close. I will say divisional games seem to be that way, but I agree with you. I was someone who maybe was a little bit of a Brock Purdy detractor in the beginning. I had my doubts, and I feel like especially because of his draft status, I had to kind of be real with myself, and I was like, if Trevor Lawrence had been playing only as many games as Brock Purdy and had been performing as well as Brock Purdy has been, would I be as critical of Trevor Lawrence, or would I be like, oh, that guy that we thought was going to be great is being great? And I kind of think because my expectation of Purdy was he's not going to be good, I kind of was like, we got to hold out. We got to hold out. We got to hold out. And I'm not saying, like maybe he just nosedives, but it just does not at all seem like that from not only his talent ability, which I think was extremely not seen. I think he's actually very, very talented. He can get the ball down the field pretty far, and I think the most important thing when you touch on Brandon Ayuk is the trust that he has with his receivers and giving them the opportunity to go make those catches that maybe previous quarterbacks in the Shanahan scheme weren't willing to test out. And Brock Purdy has given that trust, and I think that builds that chemistry with him, with CMC. You can kind of tell, and how impressive is that? Being that this offseason he was rehabbing, so it wasn't even like all offseason he was building chemistry with them. He was on his own, so it's even more impressive to think that potentially they could be getting better as the season. Like this could not be their peak, which is kind of crazy because they're record breaking right now, and they could still be getting better. We'll touch on it later, but I have that same conclusion for the defense. But I've been extremely impressed by Brock Purdy. I feel like I've been very hesitant, and there's just a certain, he can only perform so well before you finally are just like, I mean, it's right in front of me. The players see it. The fact that Kyle sees it, I think, is the number one thing, because I think that the players on the team, the locker room, would run through a wall for Kyle. I think that that's how they've had so much success under him. I think they have extreme trust in him and his opinion. And I think his decision to go all in on a quarterback this year was the smartest decision that he's made. And once again, I was someone hesitant. I was like, we don't know about his elbow. We need to keep everyone we have. We don't want Sam Darnold being number 2. What are we doing? And I feel like I was so wrong, and I have to eat my words, because going all in on Brock Purdy showed the locker room, I believe in this guy. You guys are going to believe in this guy. And they have. Like they seem,
since last year.
Well, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but they seem more united than ever, and it's so impressive. And I think Brock Purdy, you have to give him credit for the leadership, for his, like, what he has in between the eyes, being able to make quick decisions, being able to, Kyle Shanahan has talked in press conferences, and Kyle Shanahan talked about this on KMBR, and then Brock Purdy was asked about it in a press conference. They actually go over the game plan together, figure out, okay, what throws are you comfortable with? What throws are your receivers comfortable with? When we're in a pickle, what type of plays do you want to go to? And you can kind of see that mid-game, right? You see a play kind of break down, and you'll look at him looking at Ayuk, and you can tell that he's kind of moving into an open space that might not actually be where he's supposed to go, but they see it at the same time. That chemistry is palpable. I can't say that word. Palpable. There we go. And I have been, I just feel like I'm eating my words. I have been so impressed, like I said, not only with the in between the numbers, which I think people are starting to give him credit for, his decision making, his ability to stand in there against the pass rush. All I will say, the O-line looked really good. They did. Also, it was against the Cardinals, so I'm not sure,
It was definitely an easier matchup, but that's what you need, right? Like sometimes the offensive line needs these types of games to just get in that rhythm, gel with each other. They have to build that chemistry, especially the right side of the line. Burford and McKivitz haven't had that much time together, starting together, right? So that's going to take time. I was kind of figuring this would be a get right game for them. And if it wasn't, man, they'd be in trouble. But it was. They've had some really tough matchups to start the season, that right side of the line in particular. Yeah. And so they have 2 tough matchups again, like Cowboys. And then after that, the Browns defense, that defense looks pretty good, and they have a good defensive line as well. So I'm going to hold any judgment on saying, like, we don't have to worry about the offensive line anymore but definitely a positive development that the offensive line
Yes.
did look good in this one. And I think that's what helped Brock Purdy in this one,
That's
be
true.
able to
Works
do what he
together,
was
right?
able to do. Yeah,
The
everything
team
has to be clicking.
definitely works in unison. So I want to touch on, but I wanted to say one more thing about Brock Purdy. I think going all in on him, you kind of mentioned it with Colton McKivitz and Burford and Banks getting that time together. I
Mhm.
feel like Brock Purdy brings he brings stability to the offense. So like now that
Yeah.
you've chosen a guy, even though maybe this offseason he was injured, you get every, as long as knock on wood he stays healthy, these players are growing together and getting more confident and growing more trust as the practices, as the season goes on. I think I think Brock Purdy has been just excellent this year, and I am definitely excited to see him go up against harsher competition. I mean, when we're looking at the Dallas Cowboys last year, they held him to 19 points. That's the only time he hasn't scored above 30. But really quick, someone who is helping Brock Purdy and helping the team's success